DND number 4, Weeds Grow in Jesus' Name, Chapter 8. Ricky opened the door to Bree's bedroom the next morning. Her bed was made. Spotting her on the balcony watching the ocean, he joined her. She didn't turn when he approached. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her and bent to kiss her cheek. "Good morning," he whispered cheerfully. She didn't answer in kind. "How do you do it, Ricky?" "Do what?" "How do you get up each morning so positive, so happy, when it seems the whole world is falling down around you?" He sighed. "I'm just grateful. That's all. Just grateful. Be grateful for all the good things you have, and God will continue to bless you. So I'm grateful for you, for Jeffy and Mark and Joey, for my father and his wonderful, sweet wife. We're having some problems, yes, but at this very moment, every one of the people I truly love are still alive and kicking, and that gives me an opportunity this very day to interact with them, to help them, to make them happy, and that makes me happy." She turned in his arms. "How did you become so wise, huh? Is it a Kino thing?" He smiled and shrugged. "I'm not so sure about me being wise, but I think my father is a very enlightened man. My grandfather, too. Yet Dad will tell you that they weren't born with it. They strove for it." "How?" "What action does one take to strive for wisdom?" "Well, Dad says first one has to realize that we, as humans, know very little about God's universe. So first is humility." Bree laughed. "Humility, huh? Well, some people think the Kino men, and even those taught by the Kino men, are very cocky." He bent to kiss her nose. "Well, there's a difference between cocky and confidence. Our training gives us confidence. I wouldn't get anywhere in life if I didn't believe in myself, if I didn't believe I could do the things I do." "Well, do you think there's anyone who could beat you?" "In a fight? Sure, on any given day." "You're kidding." He laughed. "You seem disappointed." "Well, you just said you were confident." "I am, but I'm also realistic. For example, Dad trained Jason. Jason decided to specialize in certain lethal disciplines, and he instructs FBI agents and Navy SEALs and police officers. Some of those agents are trained to be nothing but killing machines, and they've honed in on the killing. Against them, I could probably hold my own for a bit, but because I don't have that killer instinct, I'd probably die." Bree shivered. "Okay, no more talk about dying. Back to the original question. What action do you take to gain wisdom?" "None." "None? What is that supposed to mean?" "Be still. Listen. That's the purpose of meditation, or at least our meditation, to still your mind and soul and tune into God. Listen to the still, small voice. Connect. Connect to the Holy Spirit. I try, but I have a long way to go. My father still insists he has a long way to go, which is why he was intrigued by the meditation CDs that Synchrogram came up with, and which is what I came to speak to you about in the first place." She looked up. "Well, go ahead." "First, I was going to suggest that even though no one feels up to it much, we should probably go ahead and get dressed and head to church when you don't feel like it is the best time to go and fellowship with the saints." "Okay. So you were going to suggest that, but not now?" "Right, because Jason called. His man worked on the CD all night. There were subliminal messages encoded on it. Jason's coming over a little later when Dr. Chin gets here to speak to him and us about everything." "Did he say what the messages said?" "No." "No, but he did say that it explains everything that's been happening." Bree sighed. "I hope so. Last night when we were out on the town, it hurt to see Eric being kinder to Jillian than he is to Mom. Without Mom around, he seems back to his old self." "I know. Hopefully, Jason has the information needed to put this chapter of our lives behind us." Bree nodded. "Well, what do you say we go down and eat a little something? If we were not going to church, I'd like to get in a light workout this morning." "A what?" "A light workout." Ricky grinned. "What's that?" "Funny, ha ha." No, really, never heard of that. A light workout. Sounds interesting, but what good is it? Okay, Ricky, point made. He took her hand and they made their way downstairs. The house was silent, so when Shelley screamed, "No, Eric!" it echoed through the walls. Ricky dropped Bree's hand and took off, passing Justin as he came flying out of his own bedroom. Throwing open the door of Eric's and Shelley's bedroom, the sight caught him off guard. His father had Shelley pinned against the wall, one hand against her throat, the other hand drawn back in a fist. Ricky sprang at his father, tackling him. Eric was back on his feet in seconds, and Justin stepped in to help Ricky subdue him, but there was no fight left. He looked up into his son's face, then Justin's. His eyes were glazed with tears. He groaned and gripped the sides of his head with both hands, then slipped to the floor unconscious. Ricky glanced back at Shelley. Bree had her arms around her mother, and they were both sobbing. "Help me with Dad," Ricky said to Justin. Bree pulled Shelley out of the room and took her downstairs. They sat on a sofa close together. Ricky and Justin finally joined them. "Tell me what happened, Shelley," Ricky said softly. He said. She stopped and sniffed loudly, and Bree grabbed her a tissue. "Thank you, Bree," she said softly. "It's okay, Mom. Now, can you tell us what happened?" "He said I took his CD. He wanted to listen to his meditation this morning since he was out so late last night, but the CD, it isn't in the player. I tried to remember if I accidentally put it away, but I couldn't remember. I don't think I did." "You didn't, Mom. We took it." "You did? Why?" "We haven't had a chance to tell you yet, but Ricky and I found a CD on the beach. It's the same one Eric listens to, and we thought that was weird. So Ricky got the idea that there was something wrong with the CD. He took it to Jason to have one of his sound men analyze it." "What do you mean? What do you think is wrong with the CD?" "Jason called me this morning," Ricky said. "There are subliminal messages on the CD. Jason is coming over to tell us what they are, but I have a feeling they aren't nice." Shelley shook her head. "This is too crazy. How did Beth? Beth changed out the CD. I remembered her talking on the phone about it." Shelley suddenly jumped up and ran to the nearest bathroom. Bree ran after her and held her hair back while she was sick. Bree kept her arm around Shelley's waist as she led her into the kitchen where Ricky and Justin had moved. Ricky was making Shelley one of Eric's strange herbal concoctions. "Justin told me you tied on a big one last night, Shelley," Ricky said. "You did?" Bree asked. Shelley slumped down into a chair. "I did," she moaned. "Mom, you know you shouldn't drink. You don't do it well. If one more person says that to me, I'm going to go crazy." "Sorry, Mom. I'm just concerned." "How much did you have?" "I have no idea. It's all a blur to me." Justin raised his eyes and offered a silent prayer of gratitude before he gave them the information. "She offed almost an entire bottle of scotch." "Oh, Mom, it's a wonder you're not dead," Bree said. "And on top of what I gave you?" Ricky turned. "What did you give her?" "I had some Valium. A friend gave them to me on the shoot. She thought I looked strained and upset. Last night, Mom was so distraught I thought one little pill wouldn't hurt." Ricky sighed and nodded. I guess I would have done the same." "Well," Shelley said softly, "you left them by the bed, and I took at least one more after you left." "Mom!" Shelley slammed her hands down on the table. "I needed to make the pain stop. Don't you understand? Eric hates my guts. My husband hates me. Do you get it? Do any of you get it? So I took another pill. So what? And now my husband just tried to bash my face in. Do you understand what that means and how that makes me feel? This man can kill with a well-placed punch, and he acts as if he wants me dead. I'm sleeping in the same room with him, and I'm speaking about the man I love." She slumped down. "I love him," she whispered. "Okay, Mom, I'm sorry." She hugged her mother. "It's okay to love him, Mom. Everything is going to work out. Shh, now. We're all here for you." Ricky watched Bree comfort her mother. Bree, who usually gets a bad rap for being mean, doesn't realize herself that she's a sweet, loving woman. The witch thing is just because she's strong. It wasn't really fair. Strong women are witches. Strong men are strong men. Bree drew a deep breath. Okay, let's be calm. Mom, I need to ask, are you sure you only took one more? She put both hands to her head. No, I'm not sure. Right now my head is going to explode and I'm going to be sick again. Excuse me. Bree rose to go with her, but Shelley refused her help. And when she came back, her eyes were swollen and red, and the sight broke Bree's heart. Ricky set a cup of something in front of Shelley. This will help, Shelley. She knew better than to refuse. She also knew it would help her to feel much better, physically anyway. She drank it down and sat staring into space as Ricky, Justin, and Bree spoke in soft tones. Ricky left the kitchen. Shelley supposed to check on Eric. Eric, who taught her how to defend herself against an attacker. She'd never thought that attacker would be him. She touched her throat where his hand had gripped her. He'd wanted to hurt her. She could see it in his eyes. Mom, Bree said softly. Hmm? Mom, I said we need to get you dressed. Oh. Okay, but I don't want to go in that room. I'll use the blue room. I'll get your things and meet you there. Shelley agreed, and Bree left the kitchen. Shelley stood slowly and started to follow behind her, but stopped and turned to Justin. I know I came to your room last night. I have visions of throwing myself at you. I'm sorry, Justin. I'm so very embarrassed. I hope you can forgive me. Justin sighed. There's nothing to forgive. I'm not only Eric's friend, but yours too, and you came to me for comfort. You didn't do anything wrong except stumble around a bit, and I took you to your bed. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. We've all had our bad moments. She smiled. Thanks, Justin. He nodded, keeping his eyes firmly on her face. New scene. Shelley is weak. I abhor weakness. Shelley is lazy. I abhor laziness. Shelley represents everything I despise. Shelley is promiscuous and has been unfaithful many times. I can't stand to be near her. I can't stand to touch her. Everything she does makes me want to hurt her. I want to hurt her. I need to hurt her. I want to cause her pain. I need to cause her pain. Causing Shelley pain will give me great satisfaction. I must cause her pain. I must end her life. I will only find peace when I end her life. My very existence depends on causing Shelley as much pain as possible. I hate her. I hate her. I hate her. The room was silent as Bree, Shelley, Ricky, Justin, Jason, and Dr. Chin each read over their copy of what was found to be on the CD. Ricky looked at Justin and Jason, noting the blank faces. That's what they'd been trained to do. School their features in moments of intense stress. Bree had her arm around her mother, and both women had tears running down their cheeks. Dr. Chin was thoughtful. When everyone had lowered their papers, Ricky asked the obvious question. This can be reversed, of course, right? Oh, absolutely, Ray Chin answered. How? Actually, quite easily. The first thing is to tell Eric what's been happening. I imagine he's in quite a bit of turmoil. To say the least, Justin said. Well, just knowing the cause will start the healing process. Just knowing will tell his subconscious mind that it's okay to let these thoughts go. It's like finding the answer to a question or solving a puzzle. When you finally find the one missing piece, everything else falls into place. Well, this whole thing just blows me away, Jason said. I know subliminals can be extremely effective and are getting to be very high tech. There are even a few government agencies that employ their use. Still, I wouldn't think Eric would be susceptible. He's so very strong. His mind is so very strong. Dr. Chin smiled. He is human. This new technology is based on the science of the way the brain physically functions. Do you think his brain is formed differently from yours or mine? Jason smiled. Yes. Everyone chuckled. I assure you, Eric is no god, Dr. Chin continued. If anything, he's more susceptible. How's that? Ricky asked. Well, his mind is completely opened. He's like a Zen master. He's extremely good at clearing his mind in order to bring in new information. He more than likely told himself to be open and accepting of whatever was on the CD, and his mind obeyed. Only the information he was receiving was contradictory to what he knows to be true. I'm sure he was fighting a mighty battle. Tell me, has he complained of headaches? Yes, many, and for him to even admit he has a headache is something. It would have to be really bad for him to mention it, Ricky answered. You see? So here's this good man fighting a war inside his own mind. You speak of his strength, Jason. Here is where you see his strength. Another man may have already murdered his wife and hidden the body. Eric has been battling for weeks. Sometimes the weeds growing in his mind get the better of him, and he strikes out with words, or like this morning, with actions. Somewhere deep inside his brain, he's been convinced that the only way he can survive is to hurt or even to kill Shelley, and yet she lives. He sacrifices his own mind for her. Dr. Chin spoke to Shelley now. You have been through a lot. Notwithstanding, now that you know the why, don't you already feel better? She nodded. Yes, a lot better. Eric's relief will be just as immediate. I'll work with him extensively today. You'll see an immediate improvement. It will be like a light goes on. I don't understand how something that's taken weeks to build up can suddenly be wiped away, Shelley said. Well, let me give you an example. Suppose there is a little boy who is raised with anger. When he commits a wrongdoing, his parents are angry and harsh, and this goes on for years. Then this boy grows up and has children of his own. He wants to be a good father. He tries to be a good father, yet when they spill their milk or get a bad grade, he gets angry. He can't understand why he's always so angry, and he fights it, and it's very difficult to control. And then he reads one day that someone who is raised with anger will be an angry person. Boom. That's all it takes. Just the knowledge, just the understanding. Suddenly, he feels lighter to know that it's not just his natural state of mind. He's not a bad person. When he begins to understand where the anger comes from, suddenly it's not so difficult to stop because he is aware. This is a very simplistic explanation, but I hope you're able to understand. Eric will feel immediate relief. He's not a bad man or a bad husband. There is a reason, and those bad thoughts can be swept away. We'll schedule some cleanup sessions, also some hypnosis to make sure nothing remains, and we'll have a few joint sessions with you, Shelley, if you'll agree. Of course, I'd do anything to have this all over. I'm going to have to ask you, though, to stay away from him for a few days. When she frowned, he explained further. You're the trigger. You need to give me time to unload the weapon. He looked around the room. This may take some time today. I'll ask that you not interfere. He watched for several nods of consent before he went on. And so now, I don't see any reason to prolong Eric's suffering. I'd like to go up and speak to him. He rose. If you will, all excuse me. They watched the doctor leave, grateful for his knowledge and certainty in being able to help Eric. Dr. Chin had been Eric's psychology professor 20-some-odd years before. He'd been his friend ever since, and they had complete trust in him. The room was soundless except for the ticking of a pendulum clock in the corner. It was Ricky who finally broke the silence. Jason, I want the address of Tommy's residence. Now, Ricky, Jason started, his tone like that of a forbearing parent. Jason, do not speak to me as if I'm a child. I want the address. I can get it myself. I'd just rather it come from you. I'm going to let that pass because I know you're upset. Look, I know you want to get him for the pain he's caused his family. I do too, but please, let's get Eric well first and let him be a part of it. He'll need the satisfaction. And while we're waiting, what else is Tommy planning, huh? I don't want to give him any more time. So what are you going to do then, Rick, if I give you the address? Do you intend to rush right over there and kill him? Well, if I have to, what's the alternative? To go on with our everyday lives wondering what dirty little tricks he's planning next? Are you telling me that you're stepping over the line? Have you thought about what that would do to Bree or the rest of your family? Think of Mark and Joey and how much they look up to you. Think of Jeffy, for God's sake, and your dad and Shelley, because if you cross the line, don't think you'll get away with it. Celebrity hunting is good business, especially now with this new police chief. He's by the book and is looking for a celeb to bring down as an example. Don't think you won't pay the price. You will. And so will we. Ricky stood and paced, his frustration evident. Well, then what are we supposed to do? Just sit and take it? He let rip a string of profanity. Rick, Watch your language, please, Justin admonished, gesturing toward Shelley and Bree. He looked up and realized what he'd said. Sorry, Shelley. Bree. Ricky, Bree said softly. She rose and went to him and leaned her head against his chest. I need you. Please. You're scaring me. He sighed and ran his hands down her arms and hugged her. Sorry. Okay. I'm under control. He stepped back and looked around. I vented. I'm over it. My apologies. He turned and left the room. New scene. Bree quietly slipped inside the workout room. Ricky lay on his back on the bench press, wearing nothing but a pair of shorts. Grunting each time he hefted the barbell, he finally placed it in the cradle. He sat up and grabbed his towel and wiped the sweat from his face. She moved forward and straddled the same bench, facing him. Hey. Hi, he answered curtly. You missed dinner. I'll eat something later. Jeffy's home, and she was asking about you. I'll go up to her in a little bit. Bree sighed and looked up at the weights he'd been lifting. I thought you're not supposed to bench without a spotter. I'm not lifting heavy. Her eyebrows rose. 4 times 45, that's 180, plus 2 times 25, that's 230, plus the bar, that's 295. That's not heavy. He shrugged. It's relative. He stood, leaving her alone on the bench, grabbed a couple of 40s and started curling them. Bree swung around to watch. His lips pouted as he blew out of breath with each pump. His eyes focused on the mirror on the far wall. It was obvious he was upset, tense, and needed a release. And she smiled. She could help with that. She rose and went to stand in front of him. His eyes shifted from the far wall to her face. You're sort of in my way, he said. Am I? Her hand reached out to stroke his chest. He stopped working his biceps and let the weights hang by his side. You should know. You're in a danger zone. I know. He turned and replaced the weights on the rack. This is not a good idea. And when he turned back, she was locking the door. He went back to his bench, lay back, gripped the barbell, lifted it from the safety catch, and began to press. She waited for him to place the barbell back in its cradle, then leaned forward and kissed him. He reached up to pull her close, and they tumbled off the bench. Ricky turned his body to hit first and cushion Bree's fall. She giggled, and he laughed. Then he pulled her to him for a long, luxurious kiss. Thank you, Bree, he said softly. For what? For being here for me, for helping me through, for understanding. She lay her head on his chest. You're welcome. She rose back up. Your stomach is growling. Yeah, I guess I need to eat. Want to come? No, thanks. I just did. Ricky laughed. What are you laughing at? He grinned. Nothing. I was thinking crude thoughts. Well, you'd better clean up your act because we're going upstairs to see Jeffy. Yes, ma'am. She smiled. I like it when you say that to me. I bet you do. Ricky! Jeffy cried the moment they appeared above stairs. She ran to him, and he scooped her up and put her on his shoulders. I had so much fun at Aunt Angel's, but I missed you too. You did? I didn't miss you. I barely even knew you were gone. Now, where did you say you've been? Very funny, Ricky. I know you missed me. How do you know? I'm smart like that. Yes, you are, he agreed. Jeffy suddenly frowned. Mommy took me out of school. She said she didn't want those close-minded people teaching her daughter anything. We heard, Bree said, and Mama's right. Yeah, but I don't know where I'm going to go to school now. Well, don't you worry, Munchkin, Ricky said. We'll find you the best school in the entire country, in the entire world. She grinned. Okay, but they have to have pretty uniforms. Oh, like that's real important, Ricky said as he carried her to the sofa and threw her down. But it is important, Jeffy argued. I think it's time for a lesson, little one, Ricky began. Bree watched in awe as his whole demeanor changed. He sat on the sofa and pulled Jeffy into his lap. Remember the pictures of the little children in Africa that had no food, the ones we sent care packages to? She nodded her head solemnly. Remember the clothes they had on in the picture? She shook her head. I can't always remember everything. I know, that's okay. They had old, stained, and tattered clothing. Oh, yeah, I remember now. And they were very hungry. They didn't just miss dinner. Sometimes they miss breakfast, lunch, dinner, and breakfast again before they have something to eat. Have you ever been really hungry? Jeffy thought hard. I don't think so. Well, then you get really, really hungry. It makes your tummy hurt and it gives you a headache and it makes you feel weak and dizzy. Like when I had the flu? Yes, very much like that. Just think how bad it would be to feel like that, like you have the flu all the time, every day. It would be terrible. It is terrible. So when some people arrive at the village where these children live and they offer them food, how do you think that makes the children feel? Happy? Yes. Now, what if the people came to their village and said, you can have food or you can have these very nice, pretty clothes? Which do you think the children would pick? Well, the clothes won't make the flu go away, so I hope they pick the food. Me too, because the clothes aren't very important, are they? Not when you really think about it. Jeffy nodded her head in understanding, and then she frowned. But Ricky, you have a whole lot of nice clothes. Good point, Jeffy, I do. And I'm grateful for them. Still, if someone came to me tomorrow and said, you can keep Jeffy or you can keep your nice clothes, which do you think I would keep? Well, she giggled. That's easy. You'd pick me. But what if they said, you can keep your nice clothes or you can send them to the children in Africa? What would you do? Ricky's eyes welled with tears. Ah, Jeffy, you are so very brilliant. I'd have to send them to the children, wouldn't I? Yes. And that's exactly what we need to do. Well, not your clothes because they're too big, but we need to buy clothes for the children, for all of them, in a whole village. Can we do that? I mean, we'll send food too, but they won't have to choose. I'll use my allowance money and I'll work really hard to get more money. And can we find out how many outfits we need to buy? Will you help me, Ricky? Bree chuckled. Who's teaching who? Ricky smiled at her, then kissed Jeffy's cheek. Yes, sweetie, I'll help you. We'll make it our big project. We'll get everyone in the family to help. That would be awesome. Maybe we can get Dad to get the Keno schools involved. That would be a lot of people. Yes, but Ricky, Mommy told me that Daddy isn't feeling well. And I want to go in and see him, but she wouldn't let me. Her chin quivered. Dad's going to be okay, don't you worry. You can see him tomorrow, just not tonight. She frowned. Well, when are Mark and Joey coming home? They'll be home tomorrow. They have to be back at school on Tuesday. Well, I think it sucks that they kicked them out of school when they didn't start the fight. Yeah, the no tolerance law is a tool for lazy people, Ricky explained. Instead of figuring out the right thing to do, they just punish everyone, and that way they don't have to think, and they don't have to explain themselves, and they don't have to make any hard decisions. We don't ever want to be that lazy. We always want to use our minds. He picked her up and jostled her. And don't use the word sucks. Why not? He was quiet. Good question. I'll have to think about it. For now, it's bedtime. Bree, will you read with me? Jeffy said as Ricky carried her up the stairs. Yes, as long as it's fiction and not another science textbook. Okay, but something good. You got it. And that is the end of chapter 8.